In order to plan for the future, sometimes we need to learn from the mistakes of the past. And I don't think there's many bigger mistakes that have been made in British invention history than the Sinclair C5. But I want to find out, was that just a poorly conceived idea that was never going to work? Or was it absolute genius that was decades ahead of its time? So today I have got my trusty chauffeur with me. You might recognise Neil from the Retromancave. We're off to see a chap who owns a Sinclair C5. And well, we're not at home today, we're on a road trip and we're going to the self-proclaimed City of the Future. We're off to Milton Keynes. Hello Dave, and welcome to the channel. Thanks ever so much for seeing us today. I really appreciate it. Something quite exciting for me today. I never thought I'd actually get to see one of these in the flesh, and well, hopefully get a little ride in it later, maybe. This is the Sinclair C5, lovingly restored by yourself.
Thank you.
So, just let's start at the very beginning before I get too overwhelmed and excited about it all. Why have you ended up with this in your garage?
Wow, it's a very good question. I was looking around for a project, something a bit different. Normally I delve into old electrical equipment, so I was after something a bit mechanical. What I was really after was a DeLorean, but unfortunately they cost about £30,000 and I don't know anything about fixing cars. So second best was the Sinclair C5, and like the DeLorean, it's a classic piece of British 80s technology.
Mm-hmm. It is, and I remember I was probably, what was it, mid-80s, about 1985 this was released. I remember being 8 or 9 years old, seeing this on the news and just thinking, wow, that is the future. I want one of these. I'll do anything to get one. And I mean, looking back on it now, I think, what do they retail for? About £400?
£400, yeah.
I don't know what that is in today's money, but I'm sure my parents probably looked at that and said, there's no way you're ever going to have one of those.
Yeah, it's probably near about £2,000 these days.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, still a lot of money, but still, I think it still looks very futuristic, and that's what appealed to me.
Now, I know I've got a huge amount of questions about this machine, but I'd like to get to know it a bit better first. I've never actually met one in the flesh. I've seen it in museums, but never actually got to get up close and personal with a C5 before. So why don't we start with the basics? Can you take us through exactly what it is, give us a little tour, and then we'll go from there. Is that okay?
So early in the 1980s, I believe there was a change in the law that meant that an electrically assisted pedal cycle could be legally ridden on the roads without insurance and without tax by anyone over 14 years of age. And Sir Clive obviously seized on this as a business opportunity, and the C5 was born. So it's largely based on bicycle parts. You might see the brakes and the wheels look very reminiscent of bicycles, and that's good for me because obviously the C5's been out of production for many years, but we can still get hold of bicycle wheels and tyres and those sorts of things, brake cables. So obviously with a large plastic shell over the top and the added bonus of a 250 watt motor to propel the occupant at up to 15 miles an hour.
Okay, and the power is a combination of the pedals, which we've got down there, nice Sinclair branded pedals, I might add, and the battery, which is sat just here under where your leg would be.
That's right, yeah.
And how much of it is powered by the battery, and how much work do you have to actually do with your legs? How electric is this EV?
Well, you must always start off under pedal power, otherwise you can damage the motor by straining it too much. You've always got to put in a little bit of effort to start yourself off. Then you press this button, and if you stand back, can we get it to work? And you're under electromotive power being propelled forwards.
And I think it's the original range was in the brochures, it would do 20 miles. Is that realistic?
Well, again, it's like all these things. Mobile phones are supposed to last for days, and they last half that, don't they? I think it was about the same with the C5. So the original battery, they said 20 miles range, but you'd probably get 10 out of it.
And that was a lead acid, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, lead acid. Now, I've still got a lead acid battery in here. It's an ordinary caravan style deep discharge lead acid battery, and you'd probably get quite considerably more range out of it, but I've not tried it till the battery's run out.
Test. So Dave, as we said, this is in fantastic condition, but Was it like this when you first found it?
Do you know, it wasn't in too bad nick, actually, considering that it's 33 years old. I made a conscious decision not to go for a barn find. You know, some of these C5s have been out in a cabbage patch for the last 30 years, rotten chassis and all that sort of thing. And you know, I wanted one that was complete. So I was quite lucky. It was complete. There was a few problems with it, a few patches of rust on the chassis, and I have stripped it down to the chassis and had that all powder coated and made good, hopefully, for the next 30 years. But, you know, like anything 30 years old, there are things that needed attention. So the brake cables were shot, the brake pads were gone. In fact, I've still got a bit of a problem with that rear wheel. You might have noticed it's got a bit of a squeak, and I think that is the brake pads in need of some attention. Obviously, after 30 or so years, the rubber tyres were on their way out, so it's had new treads all the way around, and new inner tubes because the tyres were going flat of their own accord. We've had some new decals for the side, these side stripes, and bits for the wheels, and fixing a couple of electrical problems. So there was a bit of an intermittent problem with this pod. You'd find that you couldn't demand power, and there was a loose connection behind here, but that was easily fixed with a bit of contact cleaner and a bit of vigorous waggling. I've had the motor apart. That's been given a full service thanks to our colleagues on YouTube, people putting videos out there, instructional videos of how to service your motor and that kind of thing. All invaluable stuff. I've never done one of these before, so brilliant to be able to rely on that experience.
Yeah, just as an aside, isn't it brilliant when people put videos on YouTube, and for those that haven't seen it, your videos are broken down to show the find of this and how you've restored it as it is. And you know, you make things sound so simple and so easy. I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure there was lots of scratch knuckles and lots of swearing when you were doing it. But I watched it, and I'm not a technical person at all, but by the end of it I thought I could do that. I'm sure I couldn't, but you make it look so simple and so easy, and you're so calm in doing it. They're an absolute joy to watch. So you know, you're saying that other people have done it. I think you've put quite a lot back in yourself now. Was it really that easy?
Well, no, indeed. I think, as I hinted at earlier on, my background's in electronics, and this has got some electricals and electronics on it, but it's largely mechanical, and I'm not very experienced in this field. I mean, you're tightening a bolt up, and you need to know how tight is tight. You're putting some grease on a bearing. How much grease do you use? These are sort of things I've had to sort of find out myself.
He was a great visionary, Sir Clive. It went beyond just the concept of this vehicle and what he hoped to achieve in the future, but he had everything planned out. I think there was 5 distribution centres around the UK. Obviously had this service centre network, you had these places where you could buy all the spare. It was, and it should have been, an absolute triumph. Without spending the next half an hour telling me all about the downfalls of it, is there any one thing that you think that ultimately was this vehicle's downfall?
Look, I think in Sir Clive's mind, this wasn't the final vehicle. No. He always intended for there to be a C10 and a C15, and that would culminate in a proper, as we would know it, electric car that you could carry passengers in, and you wouldn't get wet when it rained and cold and that sort of thing. This was just going to be a stepping stone on his journey towards that full electric car, but he had to start somewhere, and this was it. So why did the C5 fail? Well, I mean, you know, a number of reasons, really. It's one of the famous textbook cases of how not to launch a product in the UK, I believe. And he launched the thing in the middle of winter on a hilly site in London. And as you'll discover later on when we go for a ride, one thing the C5 can't cope with very well is even the slightest of inclines. It does struggle. Being around in traffic, you know, we're lucky here in Milton Keynes, city of the future, as I always say, to have a 2,000 kilometre cycle network, so you can keep yourself separate from the traffic. But even round where I live, I have ridden it on the road a little bit, and it's quite hairy. You see yourself next to a car, and you're aware of these drivers being much higher than yourself, and you know, have they seen me? Am I going to get squashed? That's always a bit of a concern with the C5 on the road, and I think that was probably a big factor in it and not succeeding. And of course, you're out in traffic with lorries and probably leaded petrol back in the 80s, breathing in all those fumes, and it can't have been a very pleasant experience. You know, he wanted people to commute to the station in these in the morning, and it wouldn't have been a very pleasant experience breathing in all those fumes.
That's interesting that what we're talking about there, nothing's really changed. We're talking about it struggling on hills, struggling in cold weather. The electric vehicles being made now, as soon as the cold weather comes, the range is just sapped from the battery. You think that we've moved on with generations of batteries on. Actually, we're not that much further ahead, are we? They're bigger batteries, they're made slightly differently, but they still suffer all the same problems.
That's right, yes, so range is a concern, and like in the cold weather, you know, they don't last quite as long as in the summer months, so yeah. They're a bit lighter though, these lithium batteries, I believe. And some enthusiasts do fit those in because obviously you've got a great weight saving, if nothing else. But you're right, they've still got the problems of range. They are going to run out, and you've still got to charge them up, and hopefully not get stranded somewhere along the way.
Dave, it's been really interesting hearing about how this came to be in your garage, but I can't concentrate anymore. I'm desperate to have a ride on it. Now, I know it's chucking it down with rain outside, but are you happy if we go out and have a go?
Absolutely.
Fantastic, let's go. So this is it, the moment of truth I've been waiting for since I was 8 years old. Here we go. I tell you what, downhill, this thing can pick up some speed. Brilliant. I have no idea if you can still see me. There's rain everywhere. I'm soaking wet, but that is so much fun. Trouble is, it doesn't have a reverse gear, so hang on, bear with me. And now, back up the hill. You can see why perhaps it wasn't the greatest idea he ever had. Good old British weather really isn't for open-top vehicles of any sort, let alone little ones that you sit on the floor. It says 15 mile an hour, but I'll be honest, we're going nowhere near 15 mile an hour. Well, as much as I love that out there, Dave, I'll be honest, it's all a bit wet today. And what better place to come and get out of the drive than the Milton Keynes EV Experience Centre. Have you been here before?
I've passed through while I've been doing my shopping, but I've never had a good look round, so good opportunity today.
Yeah, it's a fantastic resource that I know in the EV world is really well known. People would like to replicate this around the country. It's a lovely place. But that's not what we're here. We're not here to discuss that today. What we're here to talk about is more about the C5. And for me, the question that I had was, is this just the crazy brainchild of a deluded inventor that's gone horribly wrong? Or is it somebody who, he was way ahead of his time, decades ahead of his time, and he's invented something that actually, if was brought into production now, would work? Have you had a chance to think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for some of his failed products, Sir Clive was ahead of his time, and a case in point is the C5. I mean, you've got to remember that it wasn't the be-all and end-all. He wasn't, proposing that this was an electric car. This was just a stepping stone on the way from this. There was a C5, there was going to be a C10, and finally a C15, which would be a full passenger-carrying electric vehicle, a car as we know it. So, yeah, I mean, obviously here we are in 2018, electric cars here in Milton Keynes, city of the future. They are to a penny. I think here we've got more electric cars than anywhere else in the country. Is that right?
Do we know what the C10 and the C15 were going to be?
So from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, the C10 was going to be a two-seater city car, I think three-wheeler, and the C15 was going to be a four-seater car. I think it was also going to be a three-wheeler. But from what I understand, they were talking about ranges of 180 miles, which technology at the time, I think they might have been hard pressed to get that sort of range out of it.
Yeah, I mean, they were probably limited by the technology of the time. I mean, this is lead acid battery technology. It's all very heavy. Yeah. I mean, it's heavy enough just with one person in the C5. So I dread to think what this car would have required to power people on lead acid.
I have to say, I naively thought when I came to see the C5, I was going to find the whole floor plan as batteries all neatly laid out, like a modern EV. But it's just the 12-volt old-fashioned car battery.
Yeah, and I mean, my personal view is that where they went wrong was the marketing. They marketed this as a serious, go anywhere within its limitations. For example, go to the shops, go to work, go to the train station. It was a serious electric vehicle for serious people. Well, actually, it was never going to work, especially not here in this country, because the weather, for a start, was always going to put pays to that. Cold weather and rain, as we found out today. But as much security as you put on that, you park that up, somebody can pick it up and walk away with it. You know, we've been carrying it in and out of cars today. So I think it was marketed poorly, which then gave it a bad reputation. And from that bad reputation, it didn't sell. Because it didn't sell, Sir Clive didn't make the money from it, and he then didn't have the money to reinvest for the C10, the C15. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but certainly that's the impression I get.
Yeah, I don't know, though, selling it to that more limited market, the sort of high-end market, whether we'd have ever recouped. I think it was about £12 million they spent on advertising and producing the C5. Maybe, as you say, if with a higher sale price, they might have achieved.
Even to maybe the target audience, perhaps it was better as a, dare I say, like a big boy's toy. Market it as this is something you can have some fun on, you could use it to go out and about on, but actually it's not a serious electric vehicle for people to use every day to commute on. I don't know.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, the scale of the production, he was hoping to sell hundreds of thousands of these, and I think that was extremely ambitious, even, as you say, with a different marketplace, like the sort of high-end toy, if you like. I think you would have struggled to have sold more than a few tens of thousands of units.
Let's fast forward. Let's come up to modern day. So, this was very much something. It was very different. It was trying something new. I don't know that we have really moved on much further. We now have electric vehicles, and we have some very successful electric vehicles, but they still look like cars. And again, when you look towards the future, you do wonder whether car ownership, as it is at the moment, is sustainable. Do we really all need a four-seater car to drive one of us around all day, every day? Or can we go into car sharing? Can we go into personalised transport? And I know here in Milton Keynes, they've tried all sorts of different things. And they've had the pods, the transportation pods. Is that something you've seen about here or you've had experience of?
Yeah, I've seen them. So they've had pods that can take you from the railway station a couple of miles up the road here to the shopping centre, autonomous pods, driverless pods. Now, they've been operating only on the pedestrian lanes, so they're not quite autonomous vehicles, driverless cars, if you like. Yeah. My place of work, we've got about 6 places to park and charge your cars, so they're really encouraging it in here. In terms of the relevance of the C5 for today, I don't know. I think it shone a light as to the future. It wasn't a great success, but it did signal a path towards, more sustainable transport. This was something not clogging up the roads, but it's the size of a single person. Yeah. It showed that kind of a way. It's electric. It's not pumping out fumes.
Well, one person who does think it's more relevant than ever is the nephew of Sir Clive Sinclair, Grant Sinclair, because he's bringing out what is its spiritual successor, I guess, in the Iris e-trike. Have you seen this?
I have, yes. I mean, it's got a few improvements over the C5. I think it's got a covered canopy, so you're protected from the weather. That's a good thing, as we say, on a day like today, with the British weather.
But has it got any heaters in? I'll be honest, I need some heaters in there.
Yeah, it might fog up, mightn't it, the canopy? I think they might need some fans or something. Also, I think the driving position is much more elevated than the C5. As we were saying earlier, you're quite prone in the C5.
Some of the mistakes.
Quite low down, so you're sat up a bit higher in that new Iris.
Yeah, that goes back to the original criticism, was that you're so low you might not be seen by traffic, so bringing it up a bit higher is a good idea. I've seen also it's got Bluetooth rear view cameras, so you can pair up your smartphone with it and use your phone as a rear view camera. But do you know what? You could retrofit that to a C5. I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Space on the dash for a rear camera.
Speaking of retrofitting things, are there any modern upgrades that you've seen put into C5s?
Oh, it's a good question. I've been trying to keep it as far as possible as Sir Clive intended. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that upgrade them with the likes of a lithium battery. Yeah. I thought that might be quite a good addition, actually, because lugging the lead acid in and out, as I've been doing to charge it, is...
and it's not taking it away from its original conception, it's just modernising a component within.
Indeed. It's quite easily changeable.
So, as I understand at the moment, you other than this being your electric vehicle, you don't have any other electric vehicles, but I think you're kind of in the market now. You're starting to look. What's prompted that for you?
Well, I've had a change of job recently and got a job more local to where I live, and I've got a requirement for a second car. So I was thinking about perhaps something electrical. It's quite a short commute, 10 miles in either direction.
Right.
So I've been thinking of maybe going electric for that second car.
Sure. So we've said how brilliant Milton Keynes is, but if you, I presume you're coming at this from an angle that you've never experienced an electric car before, so you're quite new to actually trying to buy one.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite lucky. My neighbour just recently took delivery of a shiny new Nissan Leaf, so I've been out with her for a drive, and that's piqued my interest as well. Right. So we've been for a bit of a test ride in it, got me further interested in the idea. Well, I mean, look, here we are in the electric vehicle centre. I think this is a centre where they're not trying to flog you anything per se, but and there are a range of vehicles from different manufacturers as well. So we've got a BMW over there, and a Volkswagen, and is it a Renault over the back there?
Yeah, Renault Zoe there, yeah.
A range of different manufacturers for you to come and have a look at.
So just out of interest, so it's something that's been quite topical recently, that obviously we're still using the old model of dealerships, and you go into a dealer and they've got petrol, diesel and a few electric vehicles. Some of them are stashed out the back, some of them promote them a little bit more. You as a consumer, would you rather come to somewhere like this where there's no pressure of the sale and talk to experienced people and then go away and make your own mind up? Or would you rather go to, I don't know, for example, BMW and speak to them about buying a car from them directly? Do you have any preference or any feelings on that?
Well, I'm not much of an experienced car buyer. I lived in London for many years, so didn't have a car. So buying any sort of car actually is a bit of a head scratcher for me. So I think somewhere like this where they've got a range of cars and it's more about what are the considerations for buying a car rather than perhaps more of a sales pitch that you might expect. If you're a seasoned car buyer then and you want a BMW, then why not go to the BMW dealership?
Sure.
I'm sure they're well placed to help you, but I think it's a bit more relaxed in somewhere like this. You can find out a bit more without any great pressure.
You'd be more inclined to come somewhere like this and just ask the questions that you want to know, knowing that you're going to get an honest answer, not a salesman.
I have to say, I come from the same perspective as Dave. I don't own an EV, I own a dirty diesel, and I fully expect my next car to be an EV. And this seems like the perfect place to come because it's not just about the cars. I can probably quite quickly choose a car. They've got walls here about charging systems, different kinds of plugs, things that you can get installed in your home, as well as a very helpful gent over there who I spoke to earlier, who no doubt can tell us about the network, about how far can I expect to drive? This is my daily commute. Can I expect to do this in an EV and get impartial advice? And that's the most important thing to me, Definitely. Is the impartiality of a place like this.
Absolutely.
And not the pressure of a salesman, I think.
I think we're very much, we're getting to a point now where the landscape's changing as far as buying a car is concerned. I think it's not just about buying a car, it's about the whole experience around owning cars. EVs are the perfect opportunity for it. So you look at the likes of Tesla, you go to one of their dealerships, there's no negotiation. The price is what you pay. People don't want that backwards and forwards. I've got to go and speak to the manager. I'm going to ask the manager how much more discount we can get. People are fed up with that. They see through it. Just tell me how much I need to pay for a car. And I think more places like this, and then me being able to go away and order it on the internet because it's a set price and it's going to be the same price wherever I go. Personally speaking, I would prefer that. And I don't know from your points of view whether that would sit better with you or not.
Anything that avoids the car salesman experience sits very well with me. So
Absolutely.
Yes, full agreement.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you today. Thank you ever so much for showing us around the C5. It's a childhood ambition realised, and it didn't disappoint, I have to say. So thank you so much. Just tell everyone where we can find you on YouTube.
Okay, so my YouTube channel is Retroworkshop, and there's 3 videos on there, and the 4th one to follow very shortly.
Excellent, which will be will that be the finale, or are there plenty more to come?
Well, it'll be the finale of the C5 series, and I'll have to think of something else to look into after that.
You've got the YouTube bug, haven't you? Brilliant. So, Dave, thank you ever so much. I really appreciate it. Neil, thanks for driving me around. Cheers, mate. And that's it for today. So thank you ever so much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as much as I have. So for now, thanks ever so much. Take care, and I'll see you soon.